Welcome to Eternal Journey, the podcast.
What is up, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Eternal Journey. This is episode 16 of the podcast, and today we're going to be having a twofer, a little bit of constructed, a little bit limited. We're going to have the Homecoming Draft Format Sunset Show, where I kind of review everything about the format, and then we're going to go over my ECQ tournament report afterwards. I am your host, Jedi, aka Caesar the Crowd Pleaser, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Real quick before we dive into our Pack 1 Pick 1, or our final Pack 1 Pick 1, I want to mention my YouTube channel. That is EJthePodcast on YouTube. This is where you can find all the content that I do live, as well as some offline stuff, including draft videos, constructive videos. I like tournament. For example, just posted the first 5 and last 5 games of the ECQ for you guys to tune in and kind of follow along with me, see the good beats, the bad beats, and yeah, just post a bunch of great content on there if you can't catch me live, so check it out. Also, my live stream every Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday mornings, Central Time. You can catch me at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ. All right, guys. So, diving right into it, since I don't have any fancy sponsors or anything like that, let's go into our final Pack 1 Pick 1 for the Homecoming format. That's right. So, cracked open a pack here, and this is actually one of the ones I drafted, but once again, it's kind of hard. I can't do anything digital because of the fact that, you know, they changed the format, so now the seeded Eternal Draft Pack is first. So, you guys already knew that. I don't even know why I'm mentioning it, unless I guess for my first timers. But let's start with our commons. I'm gonna go pretty quick into it. We have Dispel, Wild Rider, Sunglass Parma, Grenadin Drone, Longshot Marksman, Nocturnal Kyrex, Hissing Spiketail, and Finest Hour. As far as common goes, I believe the only 2 that are really in contention right now is Longshot Marksman, the 2/1 Gunslinger, for 2 and a shadow, and it's quick draw, and ultimate you can pay 6 to give it a +2/+2, making it a 4/3 quick draw. Or Finest Hour, which is just Wild Growth for you guys from Magic, which is a fast spell for 1 and a green, and give a unit a +3/+3 this turn. That's a great card on offense, great card on defense. Yeah, it's just solid all the way around. In our uncommon slot, we have Showdown, which is pretty much just give one of your units invulnerable at fast spell speed, which is not bad, but if it happens to be a gunslinger, it also gives it double damage. That card has done some work. It's not amazing, but it's done some work for me. If you have, you know, somewhere between 6 to 9, actually it'd probably be closer to 7 to 9 gunslingers. Amarian Shoveler, which is the 01 that lets you essentially kind of loot, or not really, it just checks the top card of your library. If it's a Sentinel, it puts it into your hand, and if it's not, it sends it, or a Relic, sorry, Sentinel or Relic. If not, it sends it directly to the Void. And Common Cause is if you have 2 units of the same type, you can choose an influence undepleted of your choice. And our rare is Stirring Sand, which I have seen it do some work. One time I saw it do some work, but I'm not really too excited about picking a card like that double time this early, especially Pack 1 Pick 1. So I think my pick would just be Finest Hour, mainly because it goes in the most amount of decks, and it's extremely flexible, easy to splash, easy to keep up or hide. So yeah, my pick would definitely be Finest Hour here. All right, guys, so that is it. Our final Pack 1 Pick 1 for the Homecoming format, draft format. So with that, let's go ahead and go right into the Homecoming Sunset Show, guys. So, if you could summarize the set in one sentence, what would it be? Format wasn't as bad as people thought, and synergies aren't as important as you would once think. So yeah, I mean, I know when it first came out, they released it a little early. It's called the Homecoming format because of the fact that they changed the Defiance Draft format when they released the Homecoming campaign. And this was just because they figured they're changing up standard a little bit, so they might as well change up the draft format as well, which the change was welcomed by a lot of drafters, but because they took out the fixing and they feel like most of the stronger cards and rewards were in packs 2 and 3, they kind of changed the format and turned it upside down. And a lot of drafters were really down on it initially. But I think as time came, or as time went on, it kind of, a lot of players went around to it. The second part is that they added, the way they modified it is they added cards to increase synergies. And, you know, things like gunslingers and sentinels and yetis. And honestly, there were some busted decks out there that really had that hyper synergy, but the majority of decks that did well, both for me and other drafters that I watched on stream, as well as other podcasts like Farming Eternal, they realized that honestly, most of the time you still just drafted a nuts and bolts good draft deck with like some removal, some combat tricks, some solid units up a solid mana or a consistent mana curve or power curve. And then you might have had like a synergy package inside of it, like maybe somewhere between 6 to 8 cards that might have synergized well with each other. The only exception that might have been like the Sentinel deck, because of the fact that, you know, you really have to have some early game Sentinels to make the Scour Stones work. But other than that, yeah, I feel like just drafting good decks in general, and then if they accidentally had synergy, was the way to go. All right, next up, what turned out to be the best archetypes? Aurelian was great at outvaluing your opponent. Aurelian was something that other drafters like Cassandra were on. I did like the deck. You are primarily using Lethrai Courtier with a bunch of relics to just draw all the power in your deck, and then you could loot some of it away and you just would never have any power issues. And while your opponent's kind of dealing with that, the good thing about that is that your opponent's also kind of forced to use some of their premium removal on your 2-drops. So it opens up the door for your late game, like your Power Breach Sentinels and stuff, to get in there. It comboed really well with Empower units, just because of the fact that you're always going to have an abundance of power when you have 1 or heaven forbid 2 Lethrai Courtiers in play. The deck was a lot of fun to play as well. You just kind of felt like you were going off when you did it. The next one was the Yeti deck. It would absolutely crush people if you got the deck, like you had all the wind flyers, the 1/1 flyers for 2 that have ally Yeti, get a +1/+1. So you end up having, I remember one game where they went Mischief Yeti on the ground, and then I think triple wind flyer on me. They actually beat me with only 3 power because they just had so many flyers and so aggressive. So yeah, the Yeti deck, and then they went, and I've had another deck where they just went like turn 4 Slope Sergeant into 5, and then turn 5 into double Slope Sergeant, and it just, man, drawing all the gas and having a ton of power on the board. So the Yeti deck was pretty impressive. And then aggressive weapon matter decks could go the distance as well, which I kind of don't want to say Ixton or Winchest decks, because both the gunslingers and just the renown units wanted weapons, so that's why I didn't specify either or of those decks. I think both of them did some serious work. I've crushed people and ran over people using both of those type of decks. But yeah, you still wanted, despite the quality of weapons going down in the format, you still had the cards that cared about weapons, and those cards were just fine on their own if you slapped any kind of weapon on them. There also was the thing like Shigani Forge, which just kind of lets you go off in the right order. So yeah, I think the weapon matters decks were also a thing as well. All right, guys, next up we have which cards were you most wrong about during the set reviews? Which cards really surprised you one way or the other? So these are pretty much just the smaller units that I might have necessarily not either rated them highly, or I just didn't think, or maybe I thought they were bad, but they've definitely turned around for me in the format. Curator Spear, and granted, this one I'm kind of going back to the Defiance one because of the fact that I did not do a Homecoming set review. I guess I could have done a primer on me. Might do that. Excuse me. I might do that next time. So Curator Spear and Ironhook did a lot more work than you would think on the surface. So I was pretty medium on both Curator Spear and Ironhook. Ironhook I was down on because of the fact that we had Nostrix Talon. I think it's called. Pretty sure it's called that, which is The 2/2 weapon for 2, but it does require Justice Influence. So, and even those typically just traded to one thing. Same thing with Curator Spear. It being a 2/1 relic means that like you were gonna kill typically either a 2/2 or a 3/2, and then that was the end of it. But in all honesty, in this format, the 2-drop slots and even 3-drops were so kind of aggressive that having this kind of a weapon to just take out a pesky flyer or Stewart, Corendon Stewart was a big one. Taking out Corendon Stewart or Unmoored Valkyrie that they would typically eventually slap a weapon on ended up being extremely relevant in keeping the game from running away from you. The fact that Iron Hook goes in every deck was a good piece of interaction. And then Curator Spear is Shadow, which actually went really well with Aurelian Courtiers triggering it. So yeah, those 2 cards actually were up in value. Another one that I was kind of medium on but ended up outperforming this format is Granite Acolyte. It is the 2/1 for 3 that when it comes to play, you could put a 2/0 weapon on itself or something else. It was a phenomenal renown enabler. You can slap it on your flyers, or you can even put it on yourself to make it a 4/1 itself, to make it a 4/1 to block larger units. The card just ended up overperforming every time, and the fact that it only required one fire influence made it really easy to place in most decks and play on curve. And finally, Dragon Breath. Dragon Breath was great. Similar to Granite Acolyte, it was easy to splash in both decks. You really saw value out of it in the Renown decks because you were able to not only kill a unit that was probably relevant, but also trigger Renown while you're doing it. The fact that it only deals damage one way, like it's not a fight effect or a killer effect, means that you can take out units with deadly at no cost to you and stuff like that. It was a little vulnerable. You had to be careful for combat tricks or pump spells, but other than that, it was a phenomenal player and you wanted it in most of your decks. So yeah, I think Dragon Breath definitely ended up being higher than I initially anticipated. Most overrated card would probably be, I feel, Stone Scar Sentinel. When the format first came out, I guess in earlier draft formats, Stone Scar Sentinel was just a complete bomb. And don't get me wrong, it was good in this format, but I also think that initially a lot of people were like, what, 4th pick Stone Scar, and like almost slammed it. And as the format progressed, we later found out that it was going later and later. Like I would see it 8th and 9th picks. And when you would get it, if you could bond it out early, then it could be a potential bomb. But the fact that there were things like Scorpion and Stewart that were heavily played and Nocturnal Creeper meant that at least half the time your opponent had some kind of easy defense for it to kill it. So it would probably win you the game consistently about 2/3 of the time, maybe even half the time. The other half, it would just either be too slow to come out or just be on defense, or it just wouldn't have any clean attacks. So I don't think it's bad. I just think it was overrated. What were the most controversial cards? And these cards were the ones that I feel I saw the most discussion in my streams, as far as like whether to take it or not take it, if people were high on it or if people were low on it. First one is Slope Sergeant. It's a decent payoff for the Yeti deck to bond. You draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards. But constantly I saw people being like, oh my god, Slope Sergeant is there, pick it up. And I've seen other people like, I'm not really crazy about taking it here. And so that was something that really never solidified either way. So I feel like it was one of the more controversial ones, as well as how many to take, like how many is too many Slope Sergeants. So yeah, next one is Forgeborn. This is the 7 power triple red or triple fire 7/7 that you can trigger its ability to give it a +2/+0 for every unit you have in play. And that costs 9 to do that. And I think Forgeborn is a great finisher in any primarily fire deck, regardless of whether you're a Sentinel or not, or the Sentinel deck or not. But once again, same thing. I did see quite a bit of discussion back and forth whenever it was the pick on whether people thought I should take it or should not. So yeah, and finally, Oni Samurai. This is the 1-drop 1/2 with Warcry for One of Justice, and yeah, same thing. Some people were high on it, some people were not. Some people thought it was good, some people thought it was bad. I am personally not a fan of it because just 1/2s really don't do much. I did have one of my final drafts. I did have a the way it played out, I don't even remember what my hand was, but they ended up getting in there for like 4 attacks with Samurai. They were on the play and they did play at turn 1, but still. So yeah, I personally am not high on it, but there were some people that were. Next up, we have what card had your favorite artwork? And I want to say there was some pretty legit artwork in this set, but Flametail Whip in Premium I think is one of the coolest arts, just because the cat is on fire, and on Premium like the fire is all vibrant and radiating and stuff like that. So I thought it was pretty cool. Not the biggest fan of the card itself. I think I actually only ended up playing it in one deck, and it was a very go wide triple bear arms type deck, but the artwork on it is absolutely phenomenal. What were the best build around cards in the set? Some of these kind of overlap, some of these do not. Bear Arms and Shigani Forge are, I kind of stack these together a little bit because they both kind of want A, renown units, and 2, units that make more units. So Bear Arms went absolutely great with Lazy Firemain. It automatically triggered twice on itself, which is phenomenal. Shigani Forge is the same thing. I like both these because I feel like they kind of go in the same deck, where you want to have renowned targets, you want to have a lower curve to trigger more units in one turn, and Shigani Forge just helps, and Bear Arms just helps upgrade those small units to things that are extremely competitive and whatnot. So I thought that was a fun deck to build, because they just you really do just feel like you go off if you slap a Bear Arms on a 2/1 spotter, and then by the end of the game it's like a 6 or a 7/6 or something like that, and then Forge triggering a bunch of times is just awesome. Next up is Lothrai Courtier. Big fan, pet card of Cassendrath, another big drafter, and I liked it as well. And this card just goes off, man. You end up taking 2 or 3, putting them in your deck. You value relics a little bit higher, and you end up getting rewarded because you could just draw all the power in your deck by turn 6, and you just feel like you're king of the world. How can you lose from that position? It is cleaning up your draw steps because it's pulling so much power out of the top of your deck. It does an okay job of blocking, and it just ends up being a must-answer threat without actually even having any attacks. The fact that it is an elf means that you also get value out of it by being able to use Lothrai Hideaway to pump it, which, obviously Lothrai Hideaway would trigger its get a power or get a sigil ability, then also pump it so it can attack. And finally, not so much a build around, but you kind of did need to put in some work, and it was a ton of fun, was Monolith Guardian. It is the 1/1 Sentinel for 4, but if you have a relic, it gets a +6/+6, so you could potentially have a 7/7 on turn 4. This card was very either feast or famine. It would either be a 1/1 and you'd be extremely unhappy with it, or you can get a turn 4 7/7, your opponent has to deal with it, or they just lose the game on the spot. So because of the swinginess of this card, it was fun to build around, and then obviously it would help power out your Scour Stones turn 5. Was this set a print or popper set? And I believe it was a popper set. There were plenty of rares which you just kind of passed on. And I feel like in most cases, if I'm passing on the rare and it's really the uncommons, like the triple colored cards and certain synergies like we explained above, that was driving your decks and making the format, then it's a popper set. And I think it very much was. There were plenty of decks I played that either I never saw the rare or didn't have a rare, and they racked up the 7 wins, versus very few rares that made me feel like we just lose the game on the spot, including legendaries. It's a bad card, but I love it anyways. For the set would be Scavenge. This is another controversial one because some people were on it great, some people were not. I do think the fact that the rats cannot block is a significant downside to this card. It is not an assembly line. I think the fact that we have assembly line in the format also makes it a little bit worse, but sometimes it did perform, i.e. triggering Bear Arms, triggering Shigani Forge, it also had fixing built into the spell where it was shadow, but you can also gain a justice or fire influence. So once again, the card wasn't great, but I did enjoy playing it. And sometimes when you just went scavenge into like the red ring that pumped your guys, or an intimidator, you just felt like you're a king of the world. I literally never win with it, but it also always seems to beat me card. Oh man. Okay, so these I'll be kind of quick about. Rally gives +2/+0 to your entire team. It is a fastball, so you can do it in middle combat after blocks. And every time I played it, it just did okay. I think I might have won a game one time with it, but boy, has this card cost me so many games. So many games. It's just, yeah, sure, I'll take 6, and then all of a sudden you're taking like 12 and you're just dead. And yeah, but I never seem to win with it. Seraph's Beacon. This is the relic that gives you a 1/1 that has Empower +2/+2. I forgot the name of it now. But when you attack with 3 or more units, you play I think it's power. It might be just a Justice Sigil. I don't remember right now. Forgive me. I just have my show notes open. It triggers and it plays we'll say Justice Sigil from your deck. This card, like, I just don't think it's that good. Like, you don't always have the ability to attack with 3 units in limited, especially when the board is so gummy. It does trigger the Empower. That's kind of the thing for it. And getting a 1/1 on turn 3 is not very exciting either. But man, have I had this card played against me and just wrecked face, triggering all kinds of Empower, like the Owl and the 3 that comes into play. And the next card I'm about to mention, I've seen someone play 2 of them back to back against me and just was double triggering and just demolished me. So yeah, I've gotten wrecked by this card so bad. And finally, a good card that goes with Seraph's Beacon is a Resilient Wagoneer. This card is a 1/1 that empowers. It gets a +2/+2 for every other unit you have on the battlefield. And yeah, this guy has just, and I think a couple of games are posted on the YouTube channel where the board is stalled and they just have one of these, and every time they trigger it, it becomes like a 14/14 and they swing. One guy even slapped the healing mace on it, so it had lifesteal, and I was just like, oh my god. But every time I play it, they literally have the Pitfall or the Nightfall, or not Nightfall, Deadly Unit, or just some answer to it, without a doubt. Or I don't have a board. Like, it's just sitting on the board with like one other unit. It's so bad for me. But I try not to be results orientated, so I would still pick it highly and play it if I was in Argenport. But yeah, those are my picks. God, all those cards I've died to so miserably sometimes. What was the biggest groan test? What card was the overrun of the set, so to speak, for you Magic players? I had a couple of these that just every time our opponent played them, I was just like, ugh. So the only not rare is Storm Spiral. This is a 3-power fast spell that does 2 damage to the entire board. And man, have there been some blowouts with this card. There was one time against Man and Mouse that I was trying to hide a combat trick that was not really relevant. So I played a Lazy Fire main pre-combat and then swung with the board, and he literally cleared my board. It was the 3-for-1, but it was like a scavenger assembly line, so it felt like a 5-for-1 with Storm Spiral. It just blew me out. That card is just great. I've done awesome things with it myself, but yeah, you just all right, as far as rares go, we have Targov's Trading Post. The site itself is not really that exciting, but the fact that the first spell that you usually play on the agenda is place 6/6/6 Aegis Endurance Sentinels in your deck, it just makes it to where, like, you're on a clock. You're immediately like, okay, I have to kill my opponent and make super aggressive plays to try to kill them before they just get a chain of 6/6s for free out of their deck. So yeah, that one always puts you on the clock. It just, ugh. Another one that comes down late, but just completely changes the game is Clutch of Talons. This is the 2/2 plus flying relic that you can slap on, or weapon that you slap on a unit, and then I believe it's in Amplify 5. You play a 5/5 flying dragon, and yeah, this card is just typically, you know, they want to play it late in the game, and it just kind of goes off. I mean, literally, the opponent just they just changed the board state. Like, they have a big flyer, plus they just got 1 or 2 5/5 dragons, and yeah, it just entirely changes the place of the game. And now you like go from a minute from feeling like you're ahead to just being way behind, and you're miserable. And yeah, so that card always ends up bringing up a pretty decent groan test from me. Let me just pull it up real quick, double check. Amplify, no, my bad, amplify 2, that's why. Okay, my bad. It is a 4 cost, +2/+2 and flying weapon, and amplify 2. So for 8, that's why, that makes a lot more sense. For 8, you get +2/+2 and flying on one of your current units, and then 2 5/5 dragons. That card is just Bizarre Trickster is the 2/3 2-drop that pay for and silence a unit. This card just completely demolishes anything with deadly, shuts off Infused Guardian. It demolishes the Renown deck. So yeah, it is not fun to play against at all. It shuts off Steward. Then you just have a lonely 2/1. It's just so good. It's so good. And then the thing is, it's slow coming and it's never ending until you kill it. And it's just, yeah. And finally, the last one, which once again has a bit of inevitability to it if they get to play it early, is Unraveling Fanatic. This is the 1/1 that every on your upkeep, or on their upkeep if your opponent's playing it, you both draw a card. And then after the 3rd time you draw a card, it becomes a terror or horror or something like, let me just look it up. That ends up having power or attack and health equal to the amount of cards in both hands. It becomes a Sanity's Anathema, and it's not telling me what that is. Let me see real quick if it has it. Nightmare. It's a nightmare. So it has Overwhelm, and it technically has, it transforms it. So it already counts as being on the battlefield. So it technically has charge. It can attack right away. And it has power or attack and health equal to the amount of cards in both players' hands, like I just said. But when it attacks, you also draw 2 cards. If they play this on turn 3, like, you're just on such a clock. And if you don't have an answer to it, granted, it is easy to answer with like Pitfall and Conflagrate. But if you don't have that in your hand, you're just waiting for inevitability, and then you get that 14/14 and it swings and just kills you. And yeah, it just so bad, so bad. Let me know in the comments below what your all's biggest groan test card was. I'd love to see if you guys had other experiences than mine, so definitely post it on there. I might even post this on the Twitter. That's a good question to ask. What was the most frustrating bad card to lose to? What card will you not miss playing against? And what card really annoyed the crap out of you? Really, there isn't a card that I mean, pretty much my groan test cards are the only cards I really disliked playing against, really. Stewart wasn't fun either. But I mean, it's just part of the format, and it was ways to deal with. But whenever your opponent did get a Corendon Stewart in turn 2, especially if they were on the play, you just knew that thing was gonna hit you for 6 or 9 damage before you can honestly deal with it. But the bad card that just was horrible to lose to was Unmoored Valkyrie on turn 1. Just a 1/1 flyer is really never that impressive. But the fact that it has Renown, Lifesteal, if you can slap something early on it and it sticks, then like they just go to town. Like, I think they played that, and then like maybe turn 4 either got a turn 2 Bare Arms and had no answer for it, or like turn 4 played the 3/3 Mace Hammer on it and just went to town on me. I just never could recover, and that's happened more than I care to admit, to be completely honest with you. Or they'll play a Granite Acolyte, slap the 2/0 weapon on it, and then I just don't have an answer. Or they'll pump it. They'll have a pump spell to stop me from killing it. Like, I'll try to conflagrate it, they Finest Hour, and then I just don't have any other way of dealing with it. So yeah, Unmoored Valkyrie, I will not miss the. What was the bombiest bomb? What was the card you hope to open in pack 1 in your or in your sealed pools? These are all legendaries. I put 3 because I feel like you're hard pressed to lose when you play this, and if you're behind, they do bring you back in the game. It's Quicksilver, Mirror, and Martyr's Chains are the 2 relics. Like, both these cards just copying a free something every turn, even if it's mediocre, it just makes it unlimited, very easy to overwhelm your opponent. So as long as you're not straight up just dying, like they have 2 giant sentinels they're swinging in every turn, copying, you know, even just vanilla 3/3s and filling up your board with them and just being able to throw away a couple and stuff like that makes a world of difference. If you have any kind of deadly or reliable unit or feasible unit on the board, like, you just end up taking over the game. Martyr's Chains, it's a constructed bomb, it's a limited bomb. The fact that every card in your deck is live now because your units double their power at the end of your turn, and your sigils and power cards kill an enemy unit just makes that card absolutely beatable sometimes. And you know, people did main deck relic removal in this format, but there's a good chance you would have used it by then. So yeah, and sometimes you just don't draw it. And then finally, Dizo's Office, giving all your units lifesteal, killing a relevant unit when it comes into play, and getting a 4/6 unblockable at the end of it makes this card absolutely great. The fact that it gives all your units lifesteal is really what kind of puts this card above, because it forces your opponent to panic and make more aggressive plays that might not be the most feasible to try to get it off the board or kill you before the lifesteal comes too far into play. What was the best common for each color? Justice, believe it was Barrel Through or Finest Hour. These combat tricks were just absolutely phenomenal, both on offense and defense. They triggered Renown, they fixed your power, they were just great. Shadow, even though Intimidator was up there, I think it's hands down Corendon Stewart. Just being a deadly unit means it was solid anywhere up the curve, but the fact that it had Empower +2/+2, making it a 3/4 on turn 2 made it very difficult to block, and sometimes it would just get in there for a ton of damage. For Primal, I think it's either Frost Tossman or Akantha's Outrider. Once again, remember, these are commons, not uncommons. Akantha's Outrider, the fact that you could potentially have a 3/3 flyer on turn 3 made it pretty good to have multiples of in your deck, and you weren't too upset should you have to play it on turn 6. You can typically also play it somewhere earlier in the curve if you don't necessarily have that 1 or 2 drop. Excuse me, relic to get it out. And then Frost Tossman, because pretty much if you were Primal, you wanted to have at least one of these in your deck. Whether relics mattered or not, you could combo this off with the Swindler to get one into play for free. The stun effect was relevant most of the time when you played it, and then if you lasted to the late game, you could draw cards. Granted, it was 7, so it would take your whole turn to do it, but sometimes it did win you the game, especially when you were both top decking. For Fire, it's a bit of a toss-up, but I think it's hands down Conflagrate, with an honorable mention of Granite Acolyte for the reasons I stated earlier in this podcast. Conflagrate was just phenomenal. It was perfectly fine at 2, doing 3 damage to things at fast speed, so it could eat up combat tricks or just get annoying units off the board. And then if you drew it late game, when you had 7 power, you can amplify and typically take out 2 relevant or 1 relevant, 1 semi-relevant unit. For time, these two kind of overlap each other. We have Power Breach Sentinel, which is the 5/6 Sentinel that when you 6-drop, when you attack, you play a power from your deck, and Infused Guardian, which is the 4/4 infused 4/4 Sentinel for 5 that had Empower +1/+1 permanently, and it had Endurance. Both these cards are interchangeable. They were absolutely phenomenal. You were excited to play them. Infused Guardian saw more play because of the fact that it's only single time requirement and influence, so it was easier to splash in 3-color decks. What was the legendary uncommon for this set? There were plenty of cards in this slot. I just focused on uncommons. There were plenty of uncommons that just felt awesome, but honestly, from watching stream, hearing other players, looking at spreadsheets and things like that, and my own play experience, the uncommon that won me the most games, and most games across the board, is Bottoms Up. This is the fast spell for 1, amplify 2, and okay, so it is a fast spell for 1 and a red. And let me load up to make sure I say it correctly. I have it memorized, but I like to be accurate. So yeah, 1 red influence 1, it's fast spell. Give a unit a +2 attack this turn. Amplify 2, give a unit +2 attack this turn. Of note, it doesn't say an additional unit, so you can pump the same unit multiple times, or you can spread it across any number of blockers or unblock, or not blockers. I mean, you can use it on defense, but it's phenomenal on offense. Putting it on units will overwhelm to make sure they kill their blockers and still getting damage, etc., etc. This card just, it's so, you know, it's just so versatile because of the fact that the amplify is only 2, so you can spread around the love. It's just great. It wins so many games, so many games. So yeah, I feel like it was the legendary uncommon of the set. What's the worst card in the set? The biggest blank, the most last picked. I put these two, I literally almost never picked. The only reason why I ever picked them was because there was nothing but garbage commons in this pack, so I would just take the uncommon, or take these 2 cards because they're uncommon for stoning purposes. And it is Oblivabot, the 5/1 2-drop that as soon as you play another power, it destroys itself. And Lens of Clarity. This is the relic that all spells deal -1 damage while this is in play, which, I mean, it just in limited, you're literally shutting down what I think mainly just Conflagrate, which just isn't a thing. Like it just, you may not even go up against it. Yeah, it just, yeah. Let's just say you never played it. You just never played it. I've literally never seen anyone play it. So yeah, that are the 2 junk picks for the set that I never played. So moving right along, which card was the most begrudgingly playable? Rotorsmith for me. There were plenty of times where I felt like I might have been low on playables, and so I just kind of put it in my deck as a 2/2 for 3, which in a format with so many 3-drops that are solid, even basic vanilla 3/3 for 3, playing a non-utility unit that's overcosted in stats is just, yeah. So I played it a couple of times, but I really hated putting it in my deck. Yeah. Is there a card you will miss drafting? Yes, Kasul Beastmaster. I absolutely love this card because you just kind of felt like you knew what seat you were supposed to be in, or you were in the right lane whenever you got these mid-pack, it being a tri-faction color, and just, it was a phenomenal card. Like a 5/5 for 5 Overwhelm is just a bomb in most limited games, and then the fact that it had a renown trigger, so you wanted to target it with something, it carried weapons very well because of the overwhelm and the huge body. Then you would get a 2/2 flyer out of it that was relevant to help break stalemates. Yeah, the Kasul Beastmaster, I will miss thee without a doubt. What card do you still have to read when it's cast against you? Dumping Ground. That's the legendary that has it's a relic, and Dumping Ground, it is a 4-cost double shadow relic. When you summon it, you may sacrifice a unit to give enemy units a -2/-1. So typically when it comes down, that would happen. I'd be like, wait, what happened? And then it has some additional text. Pay 10 and sacrifice Dumping Ground to play 2 units from your void and give them charge. Sacrifice them at the end of turn. Yeah, every time, because it was a legendary, I didn't see it that often, and the fact that you know, it does all kinds of text on it. I had to read it a couple of times. So yeah. What was my most drafted card? To the surprise of absolutely no one, it was Bannerman. Yeah, it's just 2/2 for 2 is just solid. You definitely want it in this format to make sure you have a play, and it had no influence requirement, so went in literally every deck. And it did fix your influence by giving you an influence of any color when it came into play. It was just a perfect card for this format. I don't think anyone ever passed a Bannerman. So yeah, Bannerman, to the surprise of no one, once again, was my most drafted card. From a design/development aspect, how did this set fare? How were the mechanics? What were some of the wins, some of the losses? I think they did a great job having all the new mechanics play well. Renowned, Relics Matters, and Power all did their part in the format, and I think all of the decks were viable, so that was absolutely great. You definitely like having a draft format where multiple decks are viable, so you're not kind of fighting people for the same deck and essentially making them all subpar. It was a little easy to figure out the format, the synergies. They kind of like threw that out there, but at the same time, there was quite a bit of playability to it, like I just said. Even later in the format, as we realized that you didn't need to necessarily draft the Sentinel deck, the Gunslinger deck, the Relics Matter deck. You can just kind of have these small bonus synergistic packages within a normal draft deck, as I've stated before. I think they did a great job keeping it fresh for drafters by changing the format, and I do think the synergy theme was a bit heavy overall. But, if you didn't get those synergies in your deck, you weren't disappointed as well. Plenty of those cards played absolutely fine by themselves. So yeah, what did this format teach you? How did this format make you better at Limited? What are the takeaways? This format, at the end of the day, did make me realize that you just can never forget the fundamentals of drafting. You want to have a solid curve with a handful of playables. All the way up the curve, you want to have some solid spells, both removal and combat tricks. The way the windows of interaction work for Eternal versus Magic, I think, gives it a little more value to things like weapons versus like in Magic, you're just completely punished for enchantments and things like that. So I do like that because of the way the game works in those response windows, that you are able to play a more variety of spells and cards and not feel like they're absolutely horrible. And yeah, not to forget that you need to have some kind of finishers in your deck and removal. Like having a lot of deadly units in the format really makes you want to value some solid removal over nothing but combat tricks, because of the fact that, sometimes then they're just got automatically get a unit and null and void your combat tricks. My favorite card in the format, I think hands down, I'm not alone on this one, is Warband Scald. Like Warband Scald is just so good. It is the 5-drop in Justice. Let me look it up to make sure it's 1 Justice influence. I'm pretty sure, but yeah. So it's 5 in a Justice for a 3/4 warrior. But here's where Warband Scald comes into play, or gains its value. Warband Scald has Warcry for each of your units. That's right. So by itself, it's just a Warcry 1. But if you have it on the board with 2 other units, it's a Warcry 3. And I like this card because the body is a little undercost or overcosted, but it still does some work. But the fact that you typically sometimes were perfectly okay just swinging 1 time with it, triggering a Warcry 5, and that was good enough to win you the game. So even if you sacked it, heaven forbid you should have a way to give it flying like Levitate or Elder Feather, or even have a solid combat trick to keep it alive, and you get to attack a second time, that card is just busted and wins you the game. And the fact that it's single Justice makes it easy to splash. So yeah, Warband Scald, you are awesome. I will miss thee as well. But yeah, I think that was my favorite card in the set, even over Kasual Beastmaster, just because Scald went into so many more decks. But all right, guys, that is the Sunset Show for Homecoming. I think they did a great job on it. Once again, I know a lot of drafters were initially down on it, but we came around, and yeah, it's great. So let's go into our ECQ Dark Frontier Tournament Report. For you constructed people, if you don't like constructed and don't care, you by all means can have a great day, shut off the podcast and move on with your day. If not, yeah, let's see what's up in the constructed world for Jedi. So I decided to run Genève Peaks for the ECQ this time. I experimented with a couple of decks. I tried Reanimator for a while because I felt like Void Hate was on a low right now, and it matched up well against a couple of the decks, especially non-shadow ones that didn't have easy removal. Granted, Haru control was definitely a thing, so I had to be careful for Harsh Rule, but I feel like the deck, having multiple sabotages in the deck, really plays well to getting rid of those pesky counter spells or Harsh Rules before it becomes a threat. But I didn't have a very good record with it. I was either at close to 50% or just below it, which I didn't think was good enough. I tried the Stone Scour aggro deck that I just couldn't get to really come together for me. So I ended up starting my base with Popo Tito's Genève deck that won him the last ECQ, and slowly but surely made modifications to it to fit my playstyle and what I felt better played against the format. You can catch, once again, just for a shameless plug, you can catch the last 5 and first 5 games of the ECQ on YouTube, where I posted that today. And so I ended up, some of the changes I made, I swapped the Elysian Smuggler for the Genève Merchants, just because they, now with the way it worked, the deck, they were always going to be 2/2s. It did limit a little bit to what I can get out of the market, but not that much. I think it was okay. I ended up taking out the second banner because of that. Granted, I will say that actually the banners were both blue, so it was fine. It was just whether you wanted Elysian or Skycrag, but, or no, I take that back. I'm sorry. They were both, I think they were both time. They were both time. So I only had access to one, which I prefer the time one. Long story short, I ended up taking out the second banner, which I think did do some work. It was smart of Popotito to do that, and it did do some work because this is a very power and influence hungry deck. But the way I mulliganed and stuff like that, I felt like it was okay. I really didn't come into too many problems losing the Skycrag one, because once again, the deck only really wanted 2 primal sigils and then wanted 3 fire and 3 time. So I left in the Praxis banner. I also in the market swapped out, so I took out that and I added Cerso, because Cerso made the matchup against Praxis tokens, or Praxis Pledge, I'm sorry, a lot better. They would win by giving a unit Berserk and Deadly and then potentially Overwhelm with Shugo Tactics is mainly the way I was losing to them. So putting in Shugo or Cerso just allowed me to negate that whole thing by turning whatever unit was attacking into a 2/2 pig, which also worked well with their oversized units if they got ahead on board with like Heart of the Vault and things like that, or Moon Guard Sentinel, and even to a certain level shutting down Sandstorm Titan. So I put that in there. I only had one crafted at the time. Ironically, after the tournament, I started looking at Yodabyte's deck, so I crafted a second one. But so I just put it in the market. I thought that was fine. You know, with essentially 9 merchants, it was very consistent to get it out of the board. So yeah, I liked having it. Plus it was another 5 drop, so that was great because this version did not run Moonstone Vanguard, which honestly I didn't miss it too much, to be completely honest with you guys. The other modification I did is I took out Mala Nikova, yep, for Maknadi. And reason being is, don't get me wrong, I think the 8/8 Flying Dragon with Aegis that clears the board is absolutely phenomenal. But sometimes I found out that it wasn't as easy as I thought to trigger the not infiltrate, the damage thing. Well, spark, there you go, spark. To trigger spark. And plus what I found out as well is that there's so much value in the deck that sometimes just drawing a bunch of cards will get you there anyways, because you have Zoes, you have other Heart of the Vault, you have things like that. So in many cases, even against decks that had Equivocate, I could easily, by the point in time I could cast them Maknadi, they had already burned them, so Maknadi would stay and just draw me a bunch of cards. Plus Maknadi can just win you the game pretty quickly. Like having a 7/7 Berserk with Overwhelm means that it can do 14 damage if left unchecked. And then I think that was it for all I did to the deck. It was mainly a lot of stuff to the market and then the merchant switch. Oh my bad. I mentioned Popotito was running 10 merchants, running 2 Elysian Smugglers. I dropped it down to just 1 Genève merchant. No, wait, what'd I do? Yeah, I went down to 1 Genève merchant to add an additional Hailstorm because of the fact that Pledge was the thing, and so was the aggro deck and Hero Flyers. So I wanted to have a 3rd Hailstorm to guarantee that I would draw it in games to kind of even out those aggro games. And sometimes I even drew 2, which worked out. There was one game where I actually drew 2 against a more mid-rangey deck and was able to take out like Sandstorm Titan and Heart of the Vault, as well as all their little flyers and things like that. So those are the modifications I made to the deck. I will do it once again, the YouTube channel or the video. I have a breakdown of the deck. All right, wow, that was a little long breakdown, but such is life. We'll go through the games a little bit quicker. Real quick, guys, I finished 17 and 11, which was a little bitter for me because I'll talk about it in a little bit, but I ended up punting a game horrendously, and I'll get into it when I get there. But I could have potentially been 18 and 10, and I don't think I would have made top 64. I'm not sure, honestly, and because I didn't, I'm not gonna put too much time on it. But some of the people that did make the top 64 were the ones I lost to, and there were plenty of, I don't remember, I think at the very least the top like 54 down were 18 and 10, so I might have been in contention. But as well, being 92nd, I came in 92 is what I finished at, and I think at least in the 80s above me were 18 and 10 as well, so it was not guaranteed whether I would do it or not, so that makes me feel a little bit better. But it is so far to date my best showing at a ECQ, so I'll happily take it. But all right guys, let's go into the games. So game 1, I start off with the mirror. That's right, yep, exactly, Genev. I did expect a lot of Praxis pledge, but went up against Genev, the mirror, and nothing in my notes, so I think I just kind of outvalued them. I think we just kind of did the typical tit for tat thing, and I just had a better draw and took that game. Then game 2, yay, yet again went up against the mirror, so things were not looking great for me. I should have actually kept my record down to this, but that's okay. I'm not really worried about it, like, so I could give you guys a scenario. But ended up getting stuck missing the third time influence, which honestly happens not enough for me to really notice. I don't think the deck has a big enough influence problem as you think, especially having that Genev or Praxis banner in the market to where I typically take it aggressive unless I have, you know, 5 of the 6 necessary influence for Heart of the Vault. I typically go grab the banner anyways. Just 90% of the time I grab the banner because I have no problem slapping a Zoe in there, and then later in the game I have another merchant to pull something else out. So anyways, got stuck on 2 times, so I missed the third. I don't remember if I got the third or not. You can check in the games, but I ended up falling too far behind and losing. Game 3, I go up against Scrappy Hour, surprisingly, which was a deck I did playtest as well, but just didn't see any kind of good results with it. So for this one, I patiently answered their early threats till Heart landed. So yeah, I kind of just kept keeping the board clear. Probably used a Hailstorm to take out some unity. I think they went drone, assembly line drone, and then I just Hailstormed them, and then they like droned again or something like that. Or I had an answer to their scrap tank with torch. Because I've played the deck, I knew how the deck worked, and so I just kind of knew when to keep my removal, and I believe I even kept up a display in case they had Witching Hour. Once Heart of the Vault landed, I just rode that to victory. Game 4, we go up against Winchest, and I lose. And I remember this game because I had 3 display in hand, but my timing or sequencing was incorrect. I ended up blowing I sacked a unit. I think probably I sacked a merchant to the first Vara to keep it as a 3/4. That way I had ways of answering it because I had the 3 displays in my hand. But then I immediately killed it on my turn when I untapped. And if I had waited till my opponent's turn, they immediately played another Vara. I could have killed the new Vara while the +2/+2 trigger was on the stack and not have to worry about it. But instead, I played it. I played the display on my turn, killed their Vara while they were tapped out. Then they followed up with a Vara. That one became a 5/6, so that was an issue I couldn't have. And then they followed it up with a third Vara. And so once again, if I had sequenced their time to my plays correctly, I would have been in perfectly good shape. But instead, I didn't, and so the 2 Varas, I believe, was enough to get them to the win. So I lost that one. I don't know if they won off the back of both Varas. I think I might have been able to kill another one or equivocate one, but still. So that one frustrated me a little bit because, like I said, just a little bit better playing, knowing the matchup, knowing that they have no pump spells in that deck means I should have played it a little bit differently. It would have been an entirely different game, but hey, lesson learned. Next up is Winchest again, and this one they have no Vara, and I managed to kill everything they played. I even countered their display of ambition with a display, or maybe it was the choice. I want to say it was the choice, actually. I think I grabbed the choice. I typically grab the Caleb's choice kind of early here because one of their big finishers is either going to be Steel Forge Plate, Deep Forge Plate, or Martyr's Chain. So I wanted to make sure I had the answer for that. And I do like preemptively getting sideboard cards. I think it's solid because a lot of times your opponent can forget. I picked up this habit from Winchest. I would just typically go get Boar out of the market early, and then I had the opportunity of boring out something because they didn't know what I got or they forgot, and then I already have a merchant to immediately put Boar back in the market. So yeah, I ended up taking this one down, not having a Vara, and just having the clutch play. The nail in the coffin was definitely countering their display because they were going to get back, I believe, a Vara and a Maiden and a Rizon. But yeah, took that down. Next up, this is our good streak. This is the best streak we had, which made me really feel like I had a chance. Because we go on to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wins in a row. Gosh, oh man, that was such a great way to start off. And I actually didn't record these because it was games 5 through 11. A little bit of a spoiler. So game 6 or round 6, we go up against Haru mid-range and almost lost because they did play 4 couriers, the 6/3 flyer with invulnerability. Because I mean, like, if you have that card in your deck, you just have to mulligan until you're able to pledge. But I got really lucky because by the time they were able to stabilize by playing all 3, and I'm pretty sure it went like turn 5, 6, 7, 8, they just kept playing those guys. So having double of these on the ground definitely slowed down my attacks. I did have a Sandstorm Sentinel, so they were not flying, thank God, or I think I would have lost. So I just immediately switched my plan to burning them out, and I got fairly lucky and used a display. I think I had 1, maybe 2 merchants on the board. I should have wrote that down. And I had 1 display, think a torch, and then double, and then obviously Heart of the Vault went to the face, and then I think I had double Howling Peaks to hit them in the face for 3 apiece. So I got them that way. Next up, round 7, go up against Praxis Pledge, which once again I felt was a good matchup for me now that I knew how to play it. I saw a ton of it on the ladder, and so I feel like I was really well positioned for it. And I went down to 4 life. They got me pretty good with early aggression, to include the gun runner, but Cerso held down the board against 2 different poets that came down, or Darias, and yeah, I got the win that way. So sweet. Next up, once again, Praxis Pledge for round 8. I answered their Moonstone with a Smuggler display. So that's always nice when Smuggler comes into play. Like, God, display doing 5 damage and Howling Peaks doing 6 damage just really changes the game for any of those Praxis matchups, because now I could take out their Heart of the Vault and their Sandstorm Titans with Peaks, and the displays can take out the Vanguard before they get to draw a card. So yeah, and that's exactly what I ended up doing. Took out their Moonstone Vanguard, took out their Heart of the Vault, and just kind of outvalued them that way with my Sandstorm Titans, etc., etc. Game or round 9 went up against Skycrag Control. I think, I'm not necessarily sure, they might have been influence screwed, but that's all I saw was Skycrag, and they dirtled around. They did, yeah, they just dirtled around. I ended up going Titan on turn 4, Titan on turn 5, and the only thing they played was the 1/5 Inspire. You and your inspired units get Aegis. So I ended up killing it just because I wasn't sure. It seemed like such a niche card that, I mean, it could have easily just been a beginning player playing with what they had, but I was like, I don't know, and I'd rather them not get Aegis in case they have some kind of weird face combo or something. So I killed that. They ended up not playing anything else, and, you know, obviously Titans end the game in short order. So won that one. Round 10, go up against Huru midrange again, which is no surprise. I always left up ways to kill possible palace targets, whether it's Equivocate, Torch, Snowball, Equivocate, things like that. And so they kind of knew that, and they ended up never playing a palace. I think they ended up playing a palace turn 9 or 10 or something like that, or 7 or 8, way past the times that they could have. And of course I had an answer to it. I think I like torched Equivocate, or Equivocate torched their target when I already had overwhelming board state. It did slow me down a little bit because I had to leave up either 2 or 3 power every turn, but I felt like that was the easiest way to lose, so it was totally worth it. And I did have somewhat of a board state, and so I totally got there. Let's see. Next up was Huru Control. So this is the almost creatureless one with running the 4/4 Aegis guy. The opponent continued to run the rope for some reason. I have no idea. I do remember like they literally roped every single time. It was really odd to me. So I just flooded the board with threat after threat that they had to answer. And then eventually they exhausted their resources. So I landed a Maknadi that followed by, they had no answer to it. So I followed it up with a Howling Peaks and mirrored the Maknadi. And because this deck does not have a way of like equivocating or silencing Maknadi, it just they called it. I think they might have killed the first one. I drew a bunch of cards, and then I berserked the second one and just took the game down, giving me a win there. So we're sitting pretty. We're sitting pretty at like 11. This was game 11. So we were at 9-2 at this point. Gosh, I was feeling so good. We come back, we go up against Reanimator. That was the one thing I didn't say. I said in the video, but I didn't say at the beginning of this one. This deck is very soft to Reanimator. Our 2 counterplays is to either have a very aggressive start and overwhelm them, which is a little difficult because they have plenty of chump blockers for the Titans. So that's really not a very viable game plan. Or leave up a bunch of counter spells to counter all their grasps of darkness. The problem with this is the fact that the Reanimator decks have at least 5 sabotages with the Gunslinger, the 2-drop Gunslinger, as well as 1 in the market, and plenty of ways of recurring them. So any good Reanimator player will play the sabotage, make sure the coast is clear, whether no board wipe or counter magic, and then play it, which is exactly what my opponent did. I didn't have a display in hand, so I had to mark it for Caleb's choice. They sabotaged it, and then after 2 Azendels, I was able to answer the first one, but the second one just kind of put the nail in the coffin and ended up losing that game. Of note, a little word of the wise that I picked up is I actually wait till the turn before they can Grasp of Darkness, i.e. the turn before when they're sitting at 4 power, to get the choice if I can. Reason being is that a lot of times to maintain their curve, they will sabotage on turns 2 or 3, or well, turn 3. So turn 4, they do not sabotage, or they do, but I mean, and that's fine. They either sabotage turn 3 or 4. And so if you get it on your turn 4, if they're on the play, if they're on the draw, then you just kind of got to deal with it. But it gives them this. So if they want to sabotage you, they're going to throw off their curve and play it a turn later. A lot of people don't want to, and they just want to do it automatically when they have 5. So you have the chance of countering it. Of note, if they draw one naturally, you're still kind of stuck because they can grab the other one out of the market. So it is what it is. In best case scenarios, they don't have one, they don't draw one, so they pull the one out of the market. And then if you counterspell that one, you have a buffer. Hopefully, I think I might have done it later in this tournament, but I actually ended up realizing that my opponent didn't have one when they ended up not playing it on turn 5. And so when they tried to dig using the something of claws, the 4 in a shadow, or 4 in a primal draw spell that makes you draw 3, discard 1, I end up countering that, and so they couldn't dig deeper to get the grasp, and that ended up winning me the game as well. But I'll talk about it when we get there. Sorry, I jumped ahead, my bad. But long story short, I ended up losing that one. That's the first loss, so we are at 9-3 now. Next up, I go up against I just realized this looking at my show notes. So we go up against Praxis Pledge again. And this time, once again, I can't believe I didn't realize this. I guess the games were so far apart I didn't realize it. But I was missing the 3rd time for too long. I did get it, but they were on the board first. And it's a little tough in the Praxis or Genève matchup to come back because they go so wide. We're still typically only playing 1 unit per turn. So I almost came back. I did. I do remember this where like I was a little late getting time, but I was still making plays, playing peaks and things like that. And I almost was able to stabilize and come back. I think I might have started to be able to go aggressive, but at that point they end up getting the obelisk out of the market and playing it, giving all their guys a +2/+2. And so that was not enough. That definitely puts the mirror way out of contention, and I lost that one. Next up, we have Ixtant Control for round 14. So this is one that pretty much relies on Vargo and then a ton of board wipes. Once again, they had no units, so I just slow rolled the Caleb's Choice in my hand to counter the Harsh Rule. And I went Titan, Smuggler, and then eventually just kept up the 2 power for the Caleb's Choice up until I was able to get 8 power, so I could go Heart and Heart, and that just finished them. I do believe they tried to end of days me, or end of the story, and I obviously countered it, and that was sealing the deal. Because yeah, if you can keep a Titan and a Smuggler or something like that for a turn longer, especially if they only have one, typically it's enough to take over the game. Or they Harsh Rule your 2 guys, then you could play a Heart and kind of get back in it. So we won that one. This is our first and only losing streak, so that's a little disappointing. But round 15 we go up against Stone Scour, and Stone Scour, they end up having double Desecrate for my Titan and my Heart, and I had no answers for their champion, which ended up being of course a 5/5 trample overwhelm, sorry, magic terms, overwhelm and deadly, and then 2 double Vara. So yeah, that's a board state this deck doesn't handle very well. Them having the double Desecrate definitely put me at disadvantage, and I lost. Finally go up against a mirror again for round 16. And this one I misplayed playing a Zalchi instead of killing a site with a display. So they had a site out, and I played a Zalchi, and I believe I went to face, because I feel like I was gonna either copy my Zalchi, or I just had enough of aggressive play, or they were low enough life total to put them down. I do think I got them to single digits. I had the display in my hand to destroy their peak, and their site, and then the being a mistake, because, and I did consider it, I literally thought about it and just felt like Zalchi was the best use of my power, which was a mistake because they ended up doing the Caleb's Favor, the 2 damage to your face, draw a Fire Sigil, and then played their Mallet and the Kova Dragon, wiping my board almost, and then dealing 4 damage, and I just didn't have an answer. I had an Equivocate in my hand, but no way to pop the Aegis, so I lost to that, which was a little bit frustrating, only because I saw the correct line of play and just chose the other one. So it is what it is. Round 17, we go up against Legion Dinos. This was Yoda Byte's deck, which is one of the reasons why I considered creating afterwards, because he just went off and he actually made the top 64 with it. This is the deck that plays all the Overwhelmed Dinosaurs, followed by Divine Stat Rod. So you play on one of your Overwhelm, and you get to typically get 2 or 3 units off of it. Sometimes 1, sometimes none, but typically 2 units off of it. It plays Shepherd's Horn to make your Overwhelm units cheaper and draws you a bunch of life, and that's pretty much what went off. They killed my 2 ramp cards. No, wait a minute. No, never mind. That deck doesn't have the removal for ramp. I killed their 2 ramp cards. So they probably, I think they went the 1/1 power and then the Trailmaker. I killed them both, but they were still able to power out Behemoth a turn early, because yeah, they went turn 1 ramp, turn 2 ramp, turn 3 Horn, I think, and then they still Behemoth on turn 4, and I may or may have not had an answer to it. Then they dropped the 8/8, then they dropped Cerso. So I played my Cerso to hopefully block, but he immediately had the Equivocate for it and just swung in with too much power, so he smashed me. And that's loss at round 17. Round 18, we go up against Reanimator, which once again, I realized this deck was very soft to, but spoiler alert, we actually pull off a win here. That's right. I dodged the early sabotage, like I said, I think they sabotaged me on turn 3. I waited till my turn 4 to get Caleb's choice. No, that doesn't make sense because I wouldn't have been up. So I guess they sabotaged me. Then I got the merchant. I do remember waiting though. I do remember waiting. So I dodged the sabotage and then I left up Caleb's choice literally the rest of the game while having a Titan hit the board. I think I waited till I got 6 power, so I played the Titan and I just kept swinging with the Titan, and so they were not able to get a grasp off and I won. Sadly though, round 19 we go up against Reanimator again. We redraw down to 6, so you can imagine I'm not feeling pretty good about this, but they actually stumble on power. I believe they got stuck on 3 power for a good amount of time. We went double Titan and with display backup eventually because they were stumbling on power, and we took that down. That's right, we are 2-1 against our bad matchup, which is Reanimator. So I got a little lucky there, but hey, we played it right, we got there. Round 20 we go up against Aurelian. Don't really know what this deck was. It's just Aurelian. It's not really the Severin ring deck, right? I don't think so. I think I did go up against the Xenon deck that plays the Mayor, that lets you go like tutor out the chains early. I think I want to say I did, and that's the one that might have been the one where I double hailstormed. I don't remember. Anywho, I digress. Aurelian, round 20, they got a Mystic Ascendant out, and it triggered it. I think they triggered it once, or I killed it or something, but then they dark returned it back, and I didn't have an answer for it. It just got too big. I think it got up to like a 12-12, and then they played an Azendel, which I already did not have removal for the Ascendant, so the Azendel stuck, and it outvalued me. I had no way of coming back, so yeah, I lost round 20. Round 21, I go up against Huru mid-range. They stumbled on units. They played, I want to say they played a Hojin, and I snowballed it. They might have played a Akaria, and I snowballed it as well. I know there was one game where I had double snowballs, and they gave me perfect targets for it, but they didn't have any other follow-up units. And with only a 1/1 in power, and we hit the 1 power display. Oh, they were, maybe they were an aggressive Huru, because I do remember they had the 1/3 in power guy that becomes a 3/3. They had that. I don't remember that game very well, but we won. We took that one down. Round 22, we go against Praxis Pledge, to the surprise of absolutely no one. It was a drug out brawl, and we end up going the distance somewhere around turn 9 or 10, I believe. We stabilized, we're starting to come back, and we end up dying to Torch. I think I went a handful of turns on like 3 life, and I'm a little defensive in that matchup first because they do have an earlier start than we do, but we have the value to overwhelm them. Them having a bunch of deadly units does stall the board state for us a little bit because we can't just throw away units. And so long story short, we end up dying to a top deck Torch, which was a little disappointing, but such is life. Round 23, we go up against Praxis Pledge again, and the opponent went a little wide with all their mana ramp and stuff like that. Don't think they hit us with a Teacher Humility, but they did get us with a Stinger. Then when I played Surso, they just conceded. I remember I felt like it was really premature, but I will take it. Played Surso, I guess they had no way to answer it and realized that it crushed their game plan. So took down that win. Once again, I really felt like I was in a decent position as long as I drew well against Praxis. And they didn't have their nut draw. Like if they had their nut draw, I was a little bit of trouble, but typically I could answer. I knew how to play the around what to kill, what not to kill, how to do it. So I think it was a pretty decent matchup for us. Round 24, home stretch, guys. We go up against Huru Control, and I just lose to Power Screw. I don't remember if I got stuck at like 4 or 5 or something like that, but I do remember it wasn't influence. It was literally just power, period. And so I just lose to like them having all the plays as well as the weapon in the 5/5 weapon. So such is life. Round, actually this one, okay, this one I think I kept 2 power and like a strategize but I didn't want to go down to 6 or something like that, and we ended up just not really drawing a lot of power. So yeah, we literally lost that game to power screw. Round 25, we go up against the mirror. Started off though, we missed our second primal, so we were hurting for a little bit, or we missed primal period, but our opponent did miss some power drops, so we were able to catch back up, and we outvalued them. In the mirror, obviously, I think it's very much a momentum builder, and who gets on the board first and keeps getting on the board kind of stays ahead and wins, and that's how we took it down. Round 26, we go up against Praxis Pledge yet again, so definitely our most common matchup this ECQ. The opponent was stuck on 3 power for the entire game, and then they conceded because we just did our curve thing, and yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Okay, so round 27, I am in contention for top 64, but I don't know it because this time I just wanted to play each game as it was. Didn't put any added pressure on myself, so I never looked at the rankings or the leaderboard. So they end up going double Vara, double Maiden. And we made one minor misplay where they had Maiden and they were tapped out, and I could have killed it with the display, but for some strange reason I decided that I wanted to wait. Don't know why. I don't know why I wanted to wait to kill the Maiden. I guess maybe to kill a Vara or something, but they ended up pumping the Maiden immediately with a cudgel and or a pump spell or something, and I wasn't able to kill it, so it got pretty big, which became a problem. Then I made another misplay where once again they were tapped out, and I displayed their Rizon, and I could have equivocated the Maiden, but I felt like, hey, equivocate's a really safe answer against Winchest. Like, they have no real answers to it. So I waited till their turn, and then they end up having a card that I play tested in my Winchest deck, which is the card Protect or Protection or whatever that just gives a unit Aegis for 2, and it's a fast spell. So I get blown out by that card. Luckily, I have an answer somehow for the Maiden, but it ends up being too late. So long story short, I finally stabilize and start to pull ahead. To the point where, but I'm stuck at 3, right? Or 2. I'm stuck at 2. That's what it was. I'm stuck at 2 life, and there's no life gain in this Gen F deck, so I'm stuck at 2. I mean, I guess I could display my. I have done that before. Is display my own Heart of the Vault to gain 6 life, which is a thing. But in this deck, because I'm going against Winchest, I have to kill everything. I didn't have that option, and I end up playing super tight and start to actually attack my opponent, and then. I'm at 1 card left in hand. I played a merchant, and I got Caleb's Choice just to have the counter spell up in case they top deck or merchant, either Deep Forge Plate or Martyr's Chains. And I have a Silenced Zalchi, a Caleb off of a Peak, and the Smuggler. And they have a Bracano Smuggler with a Cudgel on it. So it's a 4/3. And I attack so in my head I'm like, okay, they've played 2 torches, so I died to 2 torches and 3 Rizons is what's left in their deck, right? That I just automatically die to. And then or obviously I think they played 1 display, so they had 2 displays or 3 displays left. Honestly, I also did punt a little bit I blocked with the Surso and the blocking a Vara instead of their Maiden, which I equivocated 1 Maiden, and then I Surso'd the other one. So I would have taken both their Maidens out of the game. Ended up blocking the Vara, which, I mean, didn't come into play because they didn't have a way to reoccur it. But if they did, they would give him another Maiden, which was the biggest problem I had in the game. So long story short, for some reason, I got that tunnel vision that I had to get my opponent dead. I had the Caleb's Choice in my hand, so I was thinking I could attack with all 3 units. They had to block. And then I could always just, if it's if they were going to kill the Caleb, well, I guess that wouldn't have mattered. If they were going to try to, for example, kill my Zoe or Zalchi, I could have bounced it. I think it might have had a Zoe in hand, maybe. I didn't, because I would have played it. So I had the Caleb's Choice. So I end up swinging with all 3 units. And as soon as I hit the attack button, I realized that I did not have lethal on board, so we're not forced to attack. So after a little bit of contemplation and pondering on my opponent's part, they kind of figured it out, and they did not block. So they go down to like 4 or 5, and then they swing on the crackback and kill me. And I was so tilted at this point. So tilted. I actually left in the YouTube video if you guys want to check it out. Yeah, I was just unbelievably tilted to the point where I had to walk away for a little bit, reset, learn from my mistakes. And yeah, because I had that game. I really feel like I could have won that game. And once again, my record was really good up until that point, so I thought I was in contention, and just throwing away a dumb loss like that is just, or a dumb win. It just, yeah, I don't know. It was really, it wasn't well played because, like I said, I made a couple of misplays to get me to that point. But still, the fact that I still had a chance to come back and I just completely punted. God, I tilted so bad. But all right, moving on. Must finish strong. We still are in contention. And for round 28, I go up against Extinct Control, which I think is a great matchup for me because honestly, like I said, if I stick one thing on the board and counter, all my stuff is bigger than Zergo. So as long, or Vargo, as long as I keep, Zergo is another magic card, jeez. As long as I keep a threat on the board and leave up counter magic for their harsh rule, like I've got this. And that's exactly what happened. I landed a Titan and I just left up a display for the rest of the game. It did take a little bit longer because of the fact that I was bottlenecking myself to make sure I had 3 power at all times. So it did take a little bit longer, and they kind of maybe came back a little bit, but in the end we ended up winning and I got there for a final record of 17 and 11. At the time that I finished, I was ranked 59, so I was pretty sure I was not going to make it, but I was going to be super tilted if I had made it at 18 and 10, if I would have been guaranteed at 18 and 10. So it is what it is. Like I said, no spoiler here, I end up finishing 92nd, which was my best showing so far. I do think I could have taken 2 extra wins, which would have locked up top 64 for me, but such is life. You have to account to variance and just knowing the fact that some games you're just gonna lose out of sheer variance, like you get power screwed or your opponent has the nut draw or just things like that. I really try to minimize the games where I lose because of my own play skill. Those are the ones that I really take to heart because those are the ones where I feel like I had a chance winning if I played better. So yeah, guys, that is it. Thanks for sticking around. Bit of a long one. We're at an hour and 21 minutes. So yeah, really do appreciate you guys hanging in there. Hope you're not too bored. You're still out there listening, having a good time. That was my ECQ report. Hopefully you learned a little something from it like I did and enjoyed it. If you guys did enjoy this report, by all means, let me know in the comments below. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to it on iTunes or SoundCloud or anything like that, definitely leave me a comment. I enjoy hearing from you guys. Speaking of which, you can catch me at Twitter and YouTube at EJthePodcast. Once again, EJthePodcast. That's where you guys follow me on Twitter. I am pretty active on there, posting when I go live on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ, where you can catch me streaming live every Monday, Tuesdays, and Saturday mornings. And if you're into talking Eternal and other things 24/7, there is a link to the Discord down below. Or you can message me directly at EJthePodcast@gmail.com. And lastly, if you're interested to know about me, Caesar, aka Jedi, you can catch my Instagram, CaesarLeBear7. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, I hope you enjoyed it. It is a bit of a longer podcast, but we had to send off Homecoming with a good sunset show, as well as let you know how the most recent ECQ went. Because next week I am hopefully Dark Frontier comes out this Thursday, so hopefully we'll have full spoilers by then, and I will be able to do the commons and maybe uncommons set review show for next week. We'll see how long. I'm debating. I think the last one was 4 hours long with just the commons. Maybe it was 3 hours. I don't remember now. But I might put the commons and uncommons together, since those are higher chances of being played together. But all right, guys, that will do it for me. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. Definitely subscribe, click alerts, follow, leave ratings, all that good stuff. It's really appreciated. Really helps me continue to make more content for you all. So until next time, keep on gaming.